I think I've shared the story with you all before of the Scottishman who returned home after the evening service was over. His wife hadn't been able to come out to that service, and she was quite surprised at how soon he was home. And so she shouted from the kitchen where she was as he walked in through the door, "Is the sermon done already?" And he responded, "The preacher is done, but the sermon has just begun." It's important, isn't it, as Christians, that we don't just think that once a sermon is finished, being preached, that it's over, that it's done. In actual fact, the sermon has to be lived out. And so, what I've done here in this short video is just put together a few questions based on last Sunday's sermon. And you'll find last Sunday's sermon linked here. So please do, if you've not already listened to the morning sermon, catch up on that, and then come back here and reflect on these questions. By all means, as you're going through the questions, pause the video, think about those questions, and then move on to the next one. And perhaps this will help us to live out what we heard on Sunday morning. So let's begin. My first question. The religious leaders pretended to be willing to receive Jesus, if only they could be sure of his credentials. But Jesus showed them something different. Jesus showed them that their real problem, was very different to the problem they thought they had. It wasn't a problem with Jesus. It was a problem that they had with themselves. In the sermon, we look at that problem. What was their problem? How would you articulate it in your own words? And is that a problem that perhaps you have? Or is that a problem you recognise in others? Question 2. The parable Jesus taught was about two sons. The first son refused to go to the vineyard when his father asked him. Later he changed his mind. The second son seemed keen and eager to go. He said, "Yes, I'll go." But he never did. Which of the two sons in the parable pictures the religious leaders of Jesus' day? And moving on from that question, which of those two sons do you perhaps identify the most closely with? Have you heard Jesus calling you to follow him, but have you been refusing? Well, if so, it's not too late. Maybe you find that you're more like the second son. On the surface, everything appears good and right. You appear to be following the Lord Jesus. Really, in your heart and your mind, you're distant from him. So take a few moments now just to reflect on which of these two sons am I most like? Question 4. What did you learn about Jesus from this sermon? Put down in your own words. Write it out, something that you have learned or be reminded of about Jesus in the sermon that you heard. And our final question. What have you learned about yourself from this sermon? Again, write it down somewhere in your own words, what you have learned about yourself from this sermon. Well, thank you for taking this time to join me and to reflect upon the message that was preached on Sunday morning. Goodbye.